White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki refused to discuss previous remarks from President Biden about former President Trump, which claimed anyone who is responsible for so many COVID-19 deaths should not remain in the White House. During a campaign debate last fall, Biden took a jab at then President Trump for 220,000 COVID-19 deaths in America, claiming that anyone who is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. Now, as nearly 780,000 American lives have been lost due to COVID-19, Psaki was asked by White House correspondents whether that is still the standard now that more Americans have died under President Biden than President Trump.
Well, Peter, what's very important for people to understand, and all of you are communicating to the public about what steps they can take to go back to normal or go back to normal life, something everybody wants to do. We're all sick and tired of this virus. But we need approximately 20% of the population or more people than are currently vaccinated to go get vaccinated and go get boosted. What we can do as the federal government is make those vaccines free, make the boosters free, make them available. The president will talk more about what we're going to do tomorrow, but we need the American people to do more who are not vaccinated to help us continue to fight the virus.
Last one, a lot of talk about the first Trump-Biden debate today, but at the second one, in 2020, when roughly 220,000 Americans had already died of COVID, Joe Biden said about Trump, anyone who is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. Is that still the standard now that more Americans have died under President Biden than President Trump?
Well, I think the fundamental question here is, what are you doing to save lives and protect people? And the former president was suggesting people inject bleach. He apparently, reportedly, didn't even share with people he was going to interact with that he had tested positive for COVID himself. He continued to provide a forum for misinformation, which probably led to people not taking steps forward to protect themselves, to wear masks, to eventually get vaccinated. This president has made the vaccine widely available. He's relied on the advice of his health and medical experts, and he is trying to be a part of solving this crisis, getting the pandemic under control. And I think there's a pretty stark difference between their approaches. Go ahead.
Jen, some Democrats have been pushing the president to suspend the federal gas tax as a way to show concern about inflation right now. Would President Biden support or consider a suspension of the federal gas tax?
I'm not aware of that being under consideration. Go ahead.
Thank you. You just said that one of the reasons to get vaxxed and boosted is not only to protect yourself against serious illness and death, but also to prevent infecting people in your community. Are you saying that people who are vaccinated cannot pass the virus on to people in their community?
I wasn't suggesting that, but I think there's no question that people who are unvaccinated will more easily get the virus than people who are vaccinated. We know that from data.
I'm about passing it on, not getting it.
I understand, but again, people who are unvaccinated, who have not received a vaccination in communities, of course they are going to be transmissible out there in communities. They can get the virus and pass it along. That was the point I was making.
Okay. And one question about Build Back Better, which is being negotiated in the Senate still, including the SALT deduction.
Yeah.
The president has said he wouldn't sign any tax hikes on people making less than $400,000 a year. Is he also committed to ruling out any tax cuts for people making more than $400,000 a year?
His bar continues to be he's not raising taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. There are ongoing negotiations, as you know, about the SALT deduction, not something the president proposed, but something leaders have conveyed at different times. There's obviously support for, and we obviously want to get this legislation moving forward. We expect the final legislation will address some of the most unfair results of the 2017 tax law SALT provision, particularly its impact on middle-class taxpayers and the uncertainty it caused. And the president expects it to be fully paid for. But again, his bar has not changed. We, of course, want to cut taxes for people, middle-class families across the...
Make over $400,000?
Again, this is not a proposal that the president proposed himself, but it is something, as you know, that there is support for, different versions of it in Congress. It's currently being negotiated. Our objective is not raising taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year and cutting costs.
But can you explain why a tax cut for someone making more than $400,000 is still somehow commensurate with his values of protecting middle-class people. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would he?
How does it not make sense?
A tax cut for someone making more than $400,000.
Is that raising taxes on somebody making less than $400,000?
So that's all you're promised. Just no tax hikes for somebody under $400,000. Tax cuts for people over that. That's possible.
I think the totality of the bill, which is the most important piece here, is cutting costs for the American people. For child care, for elder care, for health care, putting in place a historic universal pre-K program. That's exactly why the president proposed and is supporting this bill. He also knows we have small margins in Congress, so there are some components. He didn't propose the SALT deduction. It's being discussed right now and negotiated. We'll see what the final outcome and package looks like.
Jen, she's being asked to gather for the president. So
Okay.
I don't know if you can stick around for a little bit longer.
Sure, I can, and the pool will just depart. Nothing's wrong. Everything's good. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
In terms of, on Monday you gave an update in terms of members of the COVID response team being in touch with state and local public health officials, epidemiologists. You have an update on those communications, and also, does the president plan to speak with anyone in California now that this case has been identified?
Well, we have been in constant contact with local and public health officials from our health and medical team. So that was not a one-time deal. It's been continuous, and that's how we are going to continue to track and trace any cases that come up and make sure that that information is provided publicly to all of you. And that typically happens with public health, our medical experts and health officials. I don't have any calls with the president to public health officials to predict for you. Go ahead in the middle.
Yes, Jen. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead in the pink sweater.
President Biden indicated on Monday that expanding testing would also be part of the winter plan for COVID. Can you go into any more detail as to what that will look like?
He'll certainly have more to say about this tomorrow. I would note that one of the questions a couple of people asked the other day, and I didn't understand in the right way, so let me just use this moment to clarify, is about sequencing as a part of testing. So, and I just wanted to note that we expect any emergence of Omicron in the United States to be identified quickly, as we are sequencing now almost 80,000 samples per week, more than any other country. And just to give you a point of reference, that's up from approximately 8,000 at the beginning of this year. So we're going to continue to increase testing. That's something we obviously recognize as a key component of fighting the virus, but I don't have anything more to preview at this point in time.
Just one more.
Yeah.
Does the president believe that we lifted travel restrictions too early on Europe and other countries earlier this year? Does he wish that we had held off in terms of lifting those?
I don't think the president looks in the rearview mirror in that regard. We obviously continue to rely on the advice of our health and medical experts. And I would note that where we've put in place restrictions are not those countries. So I'm not sure that totally makes sense. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Is the White House discussing the possibility of asking Congress for additional COVID relief funds to deal with the Omicron variant? And is that something the White House right now thinks might be necessary?
Not at this moment do we think so, but we have ongoing conversations with Congress just to make sure we keep the door open to whatever may be needed. And I would just say, Karen, as you know, that as we look and we're trying to we're seeking more information from our health and medical experts as they're doing this testing, and we're assessing what options may be needed. Do we need a tweak to the vaccines or to the boosters? We don't know we need that now, but we are preparing for a range of options, and that includes conversations about Congress. Should we keep the door open? And we are as prepared as possible to respond.